The room went still the instant the little girl spoke. Her fingers were small and trembling as they gathered the hem of her mother's coat. She tilted her face up to the tall man in the doorway, her voice barely more than breath, yet it carried like a bell through glass. "Please don't leave us." Lila's whisper cut through clinking glasses and soft music, through the easy chatter of people who had never been late on rent. For a heartbeat, the charity gala forgot itself. Heads turned. Waiters froze mid-step. And the man everyone recognized, the one whose name floated on stock tickers and skyline cranes, stood very, very still. Jonathan Hale had been halfway to the exit, already rehearsing the polite excuse he'd made 1,000 times. Then Lila's plea hooked him by the ribs and held him there. He saw her mother, Elena, standing just behind, chin lifted with a dignity that had learned to stand without help. Her coat was clean but thin. Her eyes were tired, not from sleep but from holding the world together with thread and will. "Please don't leave us," Lila said again, softer, as if saying it quietly might keep the moment from breaking. In the arc of a chandelier's light, Jonathan's expression shifted, boardroom steel melting at the edges into something unpracticed and painfully human. His reply would silence the room for reasons no one expected. But that comes later. Before we step into this night, the choices, the secrets, the kind of mercy that can reroute a life, take a second to make sure you're with us to the end. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single turn of this story. If you believe one honest sentence can change the course of a life, hit like and leave a comment that says, "I'm listening." Jonathan took a breath, as if steadying himself on a cliff no one else could see. Lila's hand was still at Elena's coat. Elena did not beg. She never had. She simply met his eyes and waited to see whether a man who could move markets could bear the weight of one small request. "Mr. Hale," Elena said, voice steady in a way only mothers learn. "We won't take much of your time." Time. Jonathan had spent years buying it, selling it, filling it until it couldn't breathe. And yet in this suspended hush, time belonged to a girl with a whisper and a mother with unbroken eyes. What he said next would echo far beyond the chandeliered room. But to understand why, we have to go back, to the days that shaped Elena, the glass towers that hardened Jonathan, and the narrow hallway where their worlds first grazed. Stay with me. This is where the truth begins. Elena Morales had not always walked into charity galas with second-hand shoes that pinched her feet. Years earlier, she had been a woman of quiet confidence, teaching literature at a modest community college in the city. Books lined her shelves, and her small apartment smelled of ink and coffee. A life stitched together not with luxury, but with stability. But stability, as she would learn, is fragile. The first crack came when the school announced budget cuts. Enrollment was dropping, state funding was shrinking, and adjunct professors like Elena were the first to go. "We value your service," the dean had said, avoiding her eyes, "but we can't renew your contract." That was it. Years of dedication, gone in a 2-minute meeting. At first, Elena thought she could recover. She picked up tutoring gigs, babysitting jobs, even cleaned houses on weekends. But Lila was only 6 then, bright-eyed and growing fast. Every dollar stretched thinner, and the job applications she sent out, dozens, then hundreds, came back in silence. Then came the medical bill. One evening, Lila had collapsed at the playground, her tiny frame seized by a sudden asthma attack. Elena rushed her to the ER, watching machines and masked doctors surround her daughter. Lila survived, but the invoice that followed was more crushing than any diagnosis. Thousands of dollars. Numbers that Elena could not comprehend, except for the way they seemed to laugh at her bank balance. From that moment, the system began its slow, merciless squeeze. Rent was late. The landlord tacked notices to the door, red letters spelling, "Final warning." Elena rationed food, cereal for dinner some nights, soup stretched with water to last 3 days. She stopped buying anything for herself. The coat she wore to the gala had once been her mother's. Debt collectors became her daily soundtrack. Their calls were sharp, rehearsed, mechanical. "Ms. Morales, your balance is past due." Their words weren't cruel, but they carved deep all the same. Every ring of the phone felt like a reminder that she was falling, and no one was reaching out a hand. And yet, through all of it, she refused to let Lila see despair. At bedtime, She still read her stories, making voices for each character. She tucked her into bed with the same smile, even on days she had eaten nothing so her daughter could have the last apple. To Lila, her mother was strong. To Elena, she was simply trying to keep one more day from unraveling. But the world around her wasn't built for people like Elena. The safety nets had holes too wide to catch her. Programs that promised relief demanded paperwork she couldn't access. Meetings she couldn't attend because she had no childcare. The city was crowded with people in her position. Teachers, nurses, workers of all kinds who had slipped through cracks no one bothered to mend. That's why she was at the gala. Not because she belonged there, but because she had nowhere else left to turn. As she stood in that glittering ballroom, beneath chandeliers that cost more than her yearly salary, she wasn't thinking of the donors or the wine glasses. She was thinking of rent, of asthma medicine, of her daughter's future collapsing in front of her eyes. And when Jonathan Hale, one of the richest men in the city, walked past her as if she were invisible, it was Lila's whisper that cut the silence. "Please don't leave us." That plea was not just for her mother. It was for every unseen family clawing at the edges of survival in a system that had long forgotten them. Jonathan didn't know it yet, but in that moment, the story had shifted. Jonathan froze at the sound of the little girl's whisper. "Please don't leave us." The words were soft, almost fragile, but they pierced through the room like thunder. For a moment, Jonathan's carefully built world, the wealth, the reputation, the cold distance he had wrapped himself in, shattered. His chest tightened as if those words had been meant for him alone, spoken by a ghost from his own past. He stared at Elena's daughter, wide-eyed and trembling, her tiny fingers clutching the hem of her mother's dress as if letting go would mean losing everything. Jonathan's mind spiraled back to a memory he rarely allowed himself to visit. A night from decades ago. He was only a boy, standing barefoot in the small, drafty apartment where he and his mother lived. The cupboards were empty, the lights had been cut off, and he remembered looking at his mother's tired face, whispering something similar. "Don't leave me, Mama." His mother, worn from long shifts at the diner, had held him close and whispered, "I won't. I promise." But promises in Jonathan's world had always been fragile things. His mother hadn't abandoned him, but life had. Poverty had forced her to work until she collapsed, and Jonathan had been left with a vow that he would never again be powerless, never again be at the mercy of hunger or pity. And yet, standing here, with Elena's daughter staring up at him with the same desperate eyes he once had, that vow suddenly felt hollow. Money couldn't erase the loneliness in that little girl's plea. Wealth couldn't shield him from the echo of his own childhood pain. The room fell silent. Even Elena seemed caught off guard by her daughter's words, her lips parting as if to explain, to soften the moment. But Jonathan lifted a hand ever so slightly, stopping her. He needed no explanation. He understood. Something inside him shifted. For the first time in years, Jonathan Caldwell, the billionaire known for his ruthless deals and unshakable poise, felt his heart tremble. He knelt slowly, lowering himself to the little girl's eye level. His voice, when he finally spoke, was stripped of its usual authority. It was softer, raw, human. "Sweetheart," he whispered, his throat tightening, "I'm not going anywhere." The words surprised even him. Because they weren't just for the child, they were for himself. For the boy he used to be. For the man who had spent years running from the ache of abandonment. And as Elena's eyes welled with tears, Jonathan realized that this wasn't just a chance encounter. This was a collision of past and present. His wealth had built walls, but this family, this moment, was tearing them down brick by brick. Jonathan had made his decision. He wasn't going to walk away this time. He wasn't going to let Elena's pain, or her children's silent fears, become just another sad story that passed him by. For the first time in years, Jonathan Caldwell, Billionaire CEO, was stepping into a battle that couldn't be won with money, contracts, or power. It had to be won with patience, humility, and something he had forgotten he was capable of, love. But proving himself wasn't going to be easy. The very next week, Jonathan drove his sleek black car into the modest neighborhood where Elena lived. His presence drew curious stares from neighbors. His tailored suit looked so out of place against the cracked sidewalks and worn-down buildings. Clutching a small bag of groceries he'd bought himself, not ordered, not sent through an assistant, he knocked softly on Elena's door. It was Gabriel who answered. The boy's face lit up at first, then clouded over when he saw Jonathan standing there, nervous but determined. "Mom's busy," Gabriel said quickly, trying to shut the door. Jonathan held it gently, careful not to push. "I know. I just brought some things. For you. And your sister." Gabriel frowned. "You don't have to. We're fine." The words were brave, but Jonathan saw the hesitation in the boy's eyes. Gabriel didn't trust him. Not yet. And when Elena appeared behind him, her expression told Jonathan everything. Arms crossed, guarded, she spoke with quiet firmness. "You don't need to do this, Jonathan. My kids don't need pity." Jonathan's chest tightened. "This isn't pity, Elena. This is me, trying. I don't expect you to believe me yet. But I want to be here. Not just for you, for them." For weeks he tried. He showed up with groceries. He offered to fix the leaky faucet in her kitchen, something Elena had been putting off for months. He even showed up at Gabriel's soccer game, sitting in the bleachers among parents who whispered and stared at the billionaire in their midst. But no matter what he did, there was always a wall. Elena didn't push him away outright, but she didn't let him in either. She had seen too much, endured too much, to believe that a man like Jonathan could simply walk into her life and stay. And then there were the children. Gabriel was polite, but distant. He answered Jonathan's questions with short replies, eyes darting toward his mother for reassurance. His little sister, Isabella, was more open. She liked the way Jonathan listened when she talked about her drawings. But even she hesitated to get too close, as if sensing her mother's unspoken fears. Jonathan felt every bit of that resistance. He went home at night to his penthouse apartment, sitting in silence while the city glowed beneath him. For the first time in years, the view brought him no satisfaction. All he could see was the small kitchen table at Elena's home, where she and her children laughed and ate together without him. And yet, he didn't give up. One evening, after weeks of rejection, Jonathan showed up again. This time, he didn't bring groceries. He didn't bring gifts. Instead, he carried a simple wooden box. He placed it gently on the table while Elena watched with suspicion. "I want to show you something," he said quietly. Inside the box were old photographs, images of a much younger Jonathan with his parents. His father, stern and proud. His mother, soft-eyed but tired. One photo showed a teenage Jonathan, standing beside his mother in front of a crumbling apartment building. "This was my home," Jonathan explained, his voice heavy. "Before the money. Before everything. We had nothing. My father, he left. My mother raised me on her own. She worked 3 jobs. She gave up everything for me. And when I finally made it, when the money started coming in, I promised myself I'd never forget her sacrifices. But somewhere along the way, I did. I got lost in it all." Elena's eyes softened, but she didn't speak. Jonathan leaned forward, his tone breaking. "I see her in you, Elena. The strength, the sacrifice, the love you carry for your children. And it terrifies me, because I know what happens when men like me fail to appreciate women like you. My mother died before I could tell her how much she meant to me. I won't make that mistake again. Not with you. Not with Gabriel. Not with Isabella." For the first time, Elena looked at him without the armor. There was pain in her eyes, yes, but also something else, something closer to hope. Jonathan didn't press her for an answer. He simply stood, placed the box in her hands, and left. That night, Elena stayed awake long after the children were asleep, staring at the photographs of a boy who had once lived in struggle not unlike her own. And though she didn't say it out loud, a part of her heart whispered what she wasn't yet ready to admit. Maybe, just maybe, Jonathan Caldwell was not the man she had thought he was. For a while, it seemed as if life was finally beginning to find its rhythm. Jonathan had been slowly earning Gabriel's trust with quiet moments in the park. Kite flying, soccer matches, small rituals that left the boy smiling. Little Mia, though more hesitant, had started to reach for his hand when they crossed the street. And Elena, though cautious, allowed him closer with each passing week. But just when it seemed the walls were lowering, life twisted the knife. It began with a photograph. One morning, Elena was dropping Gabriel at school when another mother, sharp-eyed, well-dressed, with a smirk on her lips, approached her. In her hand was a folded magazine page. She pressed it into Elena's palm with a tone dripping in mock sympathy. "You might want to know who you're really letting near your kids." Confused, Elena unfolded the page. There, in glossy print, was Jonathan's face, sharper, colder than the man she'd come to know. The headline screamed, "Billionaire Caldwell cuts thousands of jobs, calls it necessary sacrifice." It was from years earlier, but the article detailed his ruthless decisions. How he'd closed entire factories, how families had lost everything. There was even a quote where Jonathan, under pressure from reporters, had once said, "Business isn't about feelings. People come and go." Elena's hands trembled. This wasn't the man who made her children hot cocoa. This wasn't the man who knelt on the floor to fix Gabriel's broken toy car. This was a man who had destroyed lives. Men and women not so different from her. When Jonathan came by that evening, she couldn't even look at him the same way. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice trembling between anger and betrayal. Jonathan froze. He knew exactly what she'd seen. His past, one he had tried to bury under good deeds and second chances, was staring back at him. "Elena, I was that man. I can't deny it. I thought power meant never looking back. I thought numbers were more important than people. But I'm not him anymore." But Elena wasn't convinced. "Do you know how many mothers, how many children, were destroyed by decisions like that? Men like you are the reason people like me end up begging strangers for help." Her words cut deeper than any boardroom defeat ever had. For the first time since he had left his empire behind, Jonathan realized he couldn't simply buy redemption with kind gestures. His empire of steel and glass still lingered in people's scars, and now it stood like a wall between him and Elena's trust. Gabriel, sensing the tension, clung to his mother's side, his eyes suspicious. Mia wouldn't meet Jonathan's gaze. He had been building something fragile, something sacred with them. And now, with a single headline, it was crumbling. That night, Jonathan walked the streets alone. The neon lights of the city blurred through his tears. He had thought his money, his presence, his effort would be enough. But Elena had seen the truth, and the truth threatened to undo everything. For the first time, Jonathan wondered if redemption was even possible, or if his past was simply too heavy for love to carry. The night of the school play arrived, the gymnasium packed with parents, siblings, and grandparents shuffling in their seats. Elena sat near the back, Gabriel and Sophia buzzing with nerves as they peeked from behind the stage curtain. Jonathan had promised he would be there, had promised he wouldn't fail them this time. For the first 20 minutes, Elena's chest tightened with every creak of the door, every shifting shadow near the entrance. He wasn't coming, she thought. Maybe the world he came from, the boardrooms, the deals, the deadlines, would always outweigh the fragile little family she was trying to protect. But just as the lights dimmed, Jonathan slipped into the row beside her. No suit, no expensive tie. Just a simple sweater, hair slightly tousled, a bouquet of daisies in his hand. Not roses, not lilies, just the kind of flowers a child might pick in the park. "I'm here," he whispered. "And I'm staying." When Gabriel spotted him in the crowd, his face lit up like the stage itself. Sophia, delivering her lines, glanced his way and found courage in his steady smile. For the first time, Elena didn't feel like she was carrying the weight alone. After the play, when the children rushed into their mother's arms, Jonathan stood back. He didn't want to intrude, didn't want to assume a place he hadn't fully earned. But Gabriel tugged his sleeve and said, "Did you see me? Did you really see me?" Jonathan knelt, meeting the boy's eyes. "I did. And I'll never miss another moment again." The walk home was quiet, the cold air crisp, their breaths visible in the night. At her doorstep, Elena turned to him. Her eyes searched his, not for charm, not for promises, but for truth. "Jonathan," she said softly, "this isn't about grand gestures or money. It's about showing up. If you can do that, then maybe we have a chance." For the first time, Jonathan didn't answer with words. He simply nodded, a man who had once tried to buy love now learning that the real cost was humility, patience, and consistency. And as Elena ushered the children inside, leaving the door slightly ajar, Jonathan understood. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about writing the next chapter differently. The lesson was simple, yet profound. Money could build walls, but love, steady, patient, imperfect love, built bridges strong enough to carry even the heaviest of hearts. And for Jonathan, Elena, Gabriel, and Sophia, the story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. And that, dear friends, is where their journey leaves us tonight. But I'd love to hear from you. Do you believe people can truly change, or do their past mistakes always follow them? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another soul-twisting tale. Because here, every story is more than just words. It's a mirror of the heart.